So where does this put you in thinking about regulation? And I think this is a tricky area. Yeah, a lot of Bitcoiners are anti-regulation, naturally. They don't want anything from the government to be told what to do. We're in a moment in time where there are regulations here, but you can clearly skirt them by setting yourself up abroad, which makes the US kind of anti-competitive. It creates an uncompetitive market. So one answer is to deregulate this market within the US. But in doing so, when you deregulate it, you also open up the opportunity for more scams to be created. Like, where do you, as somebody who's dealt with regulators in DC, where are you in this whole picture?
Yeah, I think it's a good question as to whether the regulations have actually prevented scams from happening or not. You know, I would love to see some kind of data on that, proving it. And, you know, going offshore, it doesn't mean you are not captured by the regulation. It just so happens that you're less likely to be enforced against. Like, they're less likely to come get you if you're offshore. So the effect it ends up having is basically just it's illegal in the United States and, you know, de facto legal everywhere else because you're just too hard to go get, or, you know, they're too lazy to come get you. So that's a huge problem. And I think that the US, I mean, I think as a nation has to decide what its national policy on Bitcoin is going to be. You know, do we care about owning crypto basically as a country, you know, in the way that we kind of own and control the internet? And do we want to be a player here, or do we want to let some other country that has better laws be sort of the central you know, epicenter of everything happening in Bitcoin and crypto broadly? And we can either, I think we need new laws. You know, the existing laws are bad. You know, they go back 80, 100 years, you know, pre-internet, when no one imagined the internet. They're talking about, you know, commodities, oranges, onions, you know, stuff like that is like what they're concerned about. And we take those laws and try to apply them to what's happening now today in crypto. And they just don't fit. It's really trying to fit, you know, I mean, this happened with Skype too, you know, as well. Like they couldn't launch because everyone was saying, well, these guys are a telephone company, right? And, you know, clearly they're not. But they were trying to fit Skype into that hole. So I think we've seen this a few times over history. I think you either have to back off as a regulator and just say, all right, we're not going to control this. We're just going to back off and allow US companies to be competitive here, and just hope that they stay here because, you know, the whole reason we set up in the US was because we felt like it would earn us more trust. We felt like most of the early adopters would be Americans. We felt like, you know, being here under the US legal system, and I think the legal system is one of the best things the US has going for it. And FTX even filed for bankruptcy in the US. We felt like being here would earn us a lot of trust. It was a better legal system, and that was important to getting adoption. And you know, I think they could do that. That would be one way. You know, so just back off, and you know, we'll see if more scams happen, or if when good players are able to be competitive, if scams don't have a place to find a foothold. You know, if they're not able to offer something that these legit businesses can't offer, then maybe they won't be successful. You know, maybe they won't be able to attract people, because people go to the scams because they just can't get what they want at the place they trust. You know, like if I could have traded Bitcoin at Bank of America, I probably would have never had a Mt. Gox account, you know? So that's one path. The other path is they've got to start enforcing globally. And that's a big ask. You know, obviously you can set up a Bitcoin exchange in your parents' garage from anywhere. You know, you don't need a bank account. You can take USDC or Tether or just Bitcoin and Ether. You don't need to have any kind of connections to the legacy world of gatekeepers. So that's a pretty big ask, is to go after everyone globally. But you know, maybe you just do enough of it and you turn away other people from trying. But they've done almost none of that. So you know, we're sort of in the worst of both worlds right now, where stuff that people want and are highly demanding and are going offshore to get is illegal in the US, illegal in the regulated markets broadly around the world. You know, so UK is the same. Australia is the same. Japan's the same. In some geos, you have to ask the regulator permission before you even launch a product. So, I mean, Japan is one example. They restrict the number of the tokens that are allowed to be traded. And if you want to trade a new token, you have to go get approval. They might take 6 months to evaluate it. So that puts Japanese exchanges at a huge disadvantage globally, right? If you want to trade the hot new coin, the regulator's sleeping on it for 6 months. Meanwhile, you can trade it at FTX in the Bahamas like right now. So what are people going to do, right? I mean, even if they want to support a domestic business, if you want to trade that asset, you're forced to go offshore. So, I think we got to pick one of these strategies and go with it, because right now we're just kind of forcing consumers into these sketchy operations, that don't have a proven history. They're not working with regulators, and people keep getting hurt. So I think that strategy's failed.
Although you say that, they still could have got hurt in a deregulated market with FTX just being in the US if their practices were still the same.
That's for sure. But FTX might not have been as competitive. Imagine if Kraken, Coinbase, and Gemini could do everything that FTX was doing.
Right.
And we had an 8-year head start on them. Would they be able to just pop out and do what they're doing and actually be competitive?
So it was the regulatory arbitrage they pulled.
Yeah, it was more so. Regulatory arbitrage usually refers to like you can get away with something in one geo. Like an example would be there's something called reverse solicitation, and I think Australia might be an example of where this works. So there are many countries where this works, where they say you can't offer this service from our country, you can't market it in our country, but if you're offering it from whatever Cancun
Bahamas,
or Mexico or whatever, yeah, like you. And you don't market here, but people go to you, they proactively find you and seek you out and go sign up with you, then that's fine. Like the US doesn't operate like that. The US says, we don't care how an American got on your platform. If you took them on, then that's your problem and you have to follow our rules.
Right.
But many other countries say, well, if they found you on your own and you're not marketing here, then like that's on them. So this is mostly a problem for the States. And so, they may have, I would say like they employed regulatory arbitrage for much of the world, but that doesn't really work for the US.
Right.
The US would still say you should have been following our rules, even if you're based in the Bahamas, it doesn't matter.
But they weren't.
Yeah, they weren't. And I think we'll find out if criminal charges come as a result of that.
Yeah, that's another thing that seems to be quite interesting is that with everything that's happened this year, we haven't really seen people getting arrested. Look, I know a couple of people have fled to Dubai where there's no extradition, but at the same time, I would have expected SBF to be handcuffs right now.
Yeah, well, it took a little bit for Mark to get arrested as well. I think I'm surprised that the FBI is not up in there confiscating laptops and like servers and stuff. I would have thought that they would do that kind of immediately.
Yeah.
Maybe there's also some kind of jurisdictional issues going on there. Maybe it's Sam's political connections, his family,
Made a few phone calls.
Yeah, I mean, it is really strange. He seems to be given the benefit of the doubt that the piece that we saw in the New York Times was just like, it's like, boo-hoo, a billionaire, he just like, fumbled the ball, lost a little bit of money. Like no mention of like, you lost 1 million clients, like $10 billion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's clearly got the mainstream media on his side. He's probably got a bunch of friends in Washington. Maybe they're looking out for him.
How do you get the New York Times on side though? Because the New York Times must be aware that when you put an article out like this, you're going to get criticized. Mm-hmm. What is the upside to the New York Times to do such a puff piece?
Well, this guy that wrote this piece, he had also written the hit piece on Kraken, and I think he covered Coinbase as well. So it's only been negative pieces. I mean, across tech.
It's not. What's his name? Is it the guy who wrote Digital Gold?
No,
it's not Popper.
No, it's not Popper.
Because he did another hit piece on. Was it Coinbase?
It was David Yaffe Bellany.
Yeah.
Because Popper did another hit piece on Coinbase.
Oh, really? That's unfortunate.
I don't know if that was it. He might have been at Washington Post. I'm not sure. Huh.
Well, yeah, this guy, I mean, he's a young guy. It sounds like he went out and spent some time with Sam in the Bahamas, and he's talking about FTX condoms and stuff. And like, who knows? Maybe he got wrapped up in the orgy situation there, and
Got some amphetamines. And
yeah,
had a party.
I mean, maybe Sam has some dirt on this guy. I don't know, but it's odd that the New York Times generally attacks tech, and they've attacked Kraken and Coinbase, and when FTX loses $10 billion of client funds, it seems like, explicitly stole them. They write this piece that like doesn't even mention anything about that. So it's very odd. I mean, it seems like the Times is or this particular guy and whoever the editor is captive somehow, by somebody, or they're trying to protect their friend. I mean, maybe, Sam is very, I think his at least his stated views, at least the front that he's trying to put on, looks like something that the New York Times would be aligned with.
Well, I think it's bullshit, personally. I read the piece attacking Kraken. I didn't like it. I think I commented and said something to you about that. And I saw the piece yesterday, and it's a puff piece. I'm following his tweets, which are coming across as quite psychopathic. Have you read the latest ones? He's trying to save the world and make everyone whole again. So moving forwards, and knowing what you know about DC, I mean, you've had to employ people to help with lobbying efforts.
Policy team, a lobbying team ourselves. It's growing. Unfortunately, it's probably going to have to get a lot bigger thanks to this. I think the blowback in DC is going to be big. I think they're going to try to attack the industry. There are a lot of politicians just, waiting for anything to attack crypto, any excuse. And this is a gift to them. And, I think we as an industry really need to come together and, stop fighting each other. It can't be about Bitcoin maximalism versus, proof of stake or any of that. Like, this is a time where like we got to be solid together in DC, like all on the same team, because they're coming for us. And they're going to try to paint this as like crypto failed, DeFi failed. It needs to be regulated. This all has to go be managed by BlackRock and Goldman Sachs. And that's obviously not what we want. And we know that's not right. We know that this is like, just as Bernie Madoff was not an indictment of the stock market or, equities, this should not be seen as an indictment of crypto. It just happens to be that the tool that the scammer used to steal from people was crypto. This is about fraud. This is about a scammer, and it has really nothing to do with crypto, but they're going to try to paint that story for sure. Yeah,
that's a massive uphill battle to try and get everyone to come together. Look, my show's a Bitcoin show, as you know, but I happily had Kraken as a sponsor. I only talked about Bitcoin. I know when this show goes out, there'll be a bunch of people listen to it, really enjoy it. And then I know in the comments on YouTube, there'll be, why have you got a shitcoin on here? There seems to be very little ability to get people from the maxi side to come across and say, let's work together. And that's fine, so be it. I mean, they think everything that isn't Bitcoin is a scam. And when things like this happen, they will point to that and say that. I don't think you're going to be able to get people to come together on it. I think you're going to have to fight that battle as it is, because I think some of the maxis will see you as part of the battle because your exchange isn't Bitcoin only. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how you make that change. I don't know if you can.
I'm still waiting to find out how we can have a Bitcoin only exchange, because there's not much demand for Bitcoin pairs. People always say like, why don't you delist all these shit coins? And I say, the dollar would be the first thing I would delist as a shit coin if we could still have a business and still make money doing that. I think people don't get that. I don't think there's enough money to be made as an exchange, maybe as a broker. And there are many successful brokers that just only sell Bitcoin, and that's fine. But what it takes to operate an exchange is very expensive and requires a lot of smart people. And I don't think there's enough money to be made only trading Bitcoin versus fiat currencies. And so I think people ought to think about it like these other coins, they might be shit coins, just like, maybe most of the stocks on NASDAQ are shit coins. But they effectively subsidize the cost of offering, a Bitcoin exchange, like for the good stuff. They help. pay for the security of it. They help pay for the licenses. And so, I think that, personally, I think most of them are shitcoins, and I personally would not hold them. But, that also goes for most stocks as well. But, I'm often wrong about the market, and that's why we exist. We exist for price discovery and for people to trade their disagreements. And, I don't take like a moral position on, which coin is better than others. Personally, I think, Bitcoin is going to be like the currency that sort of becomes the global reserve currency. I thought Ether had a shot until it flipped to proof of stake. And now I think, I'm a little more skeptical of it for that reason. But, I think all of these things, they have their place. Some of them are experiments. We try things out, we see what works. Maybe we can pull that back into Bitcoin eventually.
If it was Bitcoin only, is the point you're making is that these multi-coin exchanges will still exist globally, and therefore there won't be any competitive companies within the US who have enough money to be able to grow the industry, compete, and work with the regulators. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah, I think that if we were Bitcoin only, we wouldn't have a treasure chest to go and lobby for regulation to protect Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, I'm probably starting to sound like Sam right now, but if this is like an effective altruistic kind of like statement, but we make money from trading shit coins, and that money goes to pumping Bitcoin, basically, defending Bitcoin. And, maybe it's a necessary evil because we wouldn't have that money to buy those arms, those weapons for the battle for Bitcoin without that.
I think we're in a similar position in some ways. People are like, why do you have that sponsor? They're not a Bitcoin only company. The ability to take this team around the world and make this show is the fact that we work with companies who also have crypto. We don't promote their products. We only say buy Bitcoin here. But that gives us the budget to do this, to take a team around the world, to have this equipment, to produce a great Bitcoin show. Mm-hmm. I do wrestle with it. I mean, I'm sure you've wrestled with it as well.
Yeah, I don't tell my family to buy shitcoin number 5,000. I'm just saying like, basically buy Bitcoin and put it away and like don't look at it for another 20 years. But I think we got to appreciate that these other coins are generating a bunch of revenue, which does ultimately fund Bitcoin stuff. Stuff that's getting the show out, getting us to lobby in DC. The massive security team that Kraken has that protects Bitcoin. So I hope that whether you're a Bitcoin maximalist or not, I think you can think Bitcoin is going to be the world's reserve currency, and you can think everything else is a shitcoin. And I think at the same time, you can say like, look, they're coming for all of us together. And if we're on the side, like fighting each other when they come, we're just going to get screwed. And, for the sake of the future of the space, I think Bitcoin alone doesn't have enough firepower to win this. And I think we gotta use everyone's troops together.